Hi there, kids. My name is Carissa, and I'm going to be teaching you about the reproductive adaptations I learned about in my last 2 weeks of vertebrate zoology. Let me tell you, from dinosaurs to birds, Module 5 had several reproductive system changes so that animals could survive better on land and transition to endothermy, adapting feathers or hair, further developing oviparity, increased parental care investments, structural changes resulting in more optimal reproductive positions, and external structures for social cues. Module 5 was a crazy whirlwind for reproduction. The professor, Dr. Vandenbrooks, taught me all the ins and outs of reproductive evolution within these groups and many others that I'd love to share with you. Are we ready to jump in? Okay, great! Are you wondering how climate change and food availability in the Mesozoic era affected the reproductive system? Me too! The Mesozoic era was the age of the dinosaurs, so Dr. Vandenbrooks told me that instead of live birth, oviparity or egg-laying was on the rise. The transition into more terrestrial environments favored amniotic eggs since they didn't need to be laid in water to retain moisture. Isn't that crazy? With the environment becoming drier and hypoxic, eggs had to evolve to fit the changing demands, leading to the production of more efficient shells and eventually to increased incubation habits we'll talk about later. Reproduction itself became more seasonal following plant availability. According to the friends I like to call Wu et al., this supported a more cyclic reproductive cycle, laying eggs in more favorable conditions when resources were more readily available, leading to increased success in reproduction and survival. The lectures helped me learn about how really big dinos would lay a whole bunch of eggs to ensure their species survival so they were less likely to go extinct. If they laid live offspring, they would lay way less young in way smaller amounts. Being bigger also gives these dinosaurs extended longevity, meaning they can have more reproductive cycles, which means more baby dinosaurs. How do you think adapting for flight changed the reproductive system? Well, flying made animals evolve lighter, more efficient structures so they weren't weighed down when in the air. Dr. Vandenbrooks told me that birds reduce their weight to fly by losing their urinary bladder as well as only having one ovary in females. I also learned that viviparity is not seen in birds, as live young will be way too heavy to carry when flying. This shift to lighter bodily structures improved their flying methods while retaining adequate reproductive methods. I found that endothermic adaptations led to the evolution of feathers. I learned from Dr. Vandenbrooks that feathers arose first as a form of thermal regulation and not for flight. Feathers keep the little creatures warm and in turn help the animals keep their eggs warm, supporting the incubation and success of babies hatching. How crazy is it that feathers weren't invented first for flying? Therapsids are oviparous, meaning they lay eggs. Can you say therapsids? Great! I learned from our lectures that they evolved hair, helping them flourish in their environment by keeping them warm, supporting the transition to endothermy. Relying less on external heat sources gave them more freedom to explore new reproductive methods. Therapsids also reduced lumbar ribs with a more upright position. This would have helped with the reproductive process itself, as the upright position is more optimal for fertilizing and egg laying, giving them an easier and more successful reproductive experience. I think it's pretty cool that these adaptations evolved in therapsids, or they probably wouldn't have been able to make it through the Permian-Triassic extinction. Most archosaurs went extinct during the Mesozoic, besides birds, crocodilians, and possibly turtles. The Triassic-Jurassic transition is where things start to get tricky. Can you guess what the environment was like at this time? Well, the climate was becoming drier with more variation in temperature. Luckily, archosaurs had adapted hard-shelled eggs, which were good at retaining moisture and protection. This reproductive advantage is what likely drove the success of archosaurs in this varying climate. Remember how dinosaurs are really big? That's why I mentioned earlier how they laid large amounts of eggs instead of investing lots of their energy in smaller amounts of live offspring. The various hadrosaur crest and ceratosaur frill shapes mentioned by Dr. Vandenbrooks are another reproductive advantage dinosaurs evolved. These external features were important for intra-specific interactions like male dominance and sexual selection. Do we remember what intra-specific is? That's right, it means interactions within a population. Their unique shapes help them find mates in this highly competitive environment, ensuring their survival. Theropods were a large group of dinosaurs, including the really scary ones like these. Our lectures mention that many of the theropod lineages possessed feathers, which likely supported egg incubation and sexual attraction. Research from Lockley et al. Mentions that theropods performed courtship displays similar to many modern birds. How funny would that be to see theropod dinosaurs doing a mating dance? These displays, along with their feathers, help theropods survive in their highly competitive environment by attracting mates and supporting their reproductive success. Dr. Vandenbergs told me that all avies lay eggs, making them oviparous. They were able to experience terrestrial climates and not depend on water as much due to the complex environment that their eggs provide. Birds also developed a crop in order to store more food so they could later regurgitate it for their young. It may look gross, but that's what it took for birds to keep their young safe in high levels of predation, keeping their babies fed until they grew big enough to find food of their own. Who wants to learn more about the Stegosaurus dinosaur reproductive adaptations? I know I do. The lecture said these creatures were around 2 to 3 tons, so we know they laid many eggs to overcome trade-offs for their size. Research from SETA indicates the Stegosaurus boys had bigger, wider dermal plates, and girls had narrower, smaller plates. We would think that this adaptation would be a result of male competition, but evidence shows that if there was intraspecific combat, the traits for larger spikes would have evolved instead. I guess the girls like a Stegosaurus mate with bigger dermal plates. This secondary sexual characteristic likely evolved from the female choice of needing bigger protection from predators and better survival for their offspring in their highly competitive environment. In Module 6, Dr. Vandenbergs told me all about mammal adaptations like mammary glands, different levels of development at birth, varying pelvic sizes, increased parental investments, and nipples. These reproductive advantages had to evolve in order to avoid predation, maintain internal heat in their changing environment, provide adequate nutrients to their young while protecting them from harm, and improve the overall survival of offspring. Though there are many varieties of mammals, adaptations evolved from these creatures into what we are today. That's right, you and me. We all know what mammals are, right? Good. The mummies of the mammalian clade evolved mammary glands so they can produce milk to feed their babies. Only marsupials and placentals actually possess nipples with an efficient number correlating to their number of offspring. The extinct mammalian lineage, Allotheria, evolved a more narrow pelvis for their reproductive adaptation. I learned from the lectures that this means they gave birth to less developed young, which emphasizes the correlation between pelvis size and offspring birth size. Though a small pelvis means underdeveloped young, the Allotheria were able to maintain their advantageous size in an environment that was unfavorable for bigger animals while devoting more time to nurturing their young so they can be optimally developed when it's time for them to leave the nest and take on life's dangers. Monotremes are the only mammals that lay eggs and produce milk without nipples. Does everyone remember what the classic monotreme is? The platypus! Dr. Vandenbergs emphasized that they have a similar structure to a reptile's cloaca, which is a single opening for reproduction, excretion, and defecation. That's insane! But potentially more efficient for them as they don't need to invest more energy in separate structures. Like the Allotheria, monotremes birth underdeveloped young. However, adapted milk fields, which are mammary glands on their underside, which is readily available nutrients for their young. This adaptation drives offspring survival as the mother doesn't have to be away from their offspring to search for food as often, giving them the upper hand in a constantly changing environment. I found in the lectures that marsupials are known for the pouch to carry their offspring, which helps offset the fact that they birth less developed young. They do have a placenta, surprisingly, though it isn't as developed as the one possessed by placentals. Even though they birth less developed offspring, they are able to save energy this way and nurture the babies in their pouch further, which is less taxing on their body. It's so cool that they're able to protect their babies from the outside world while not having to carry them around internally, helping them be less tired when escaping predation. Finally, placentals have a complex placenta that carries their live young internally until it's fully developed. I learned from the lectures that placentals lack a pouch and therefore lack the epipubic bone that marsupials and monotremes have to support theirs. Lacking this bone helps give the baby more room as gestational periods are longer for these creatures. Longer pregnancies leads to more developed young that aren't as reliant on constant parental care after birth, even though I know me and you couldn't survive on our own as babies. But even as babies, us humans were more developed than we could ever be in a marsupial placenta. Dr. Weaver let me pick my favorite mammal for Module 6. What do you think I chose? Good guess, but I actually chose the humpback whale. Humpbacks are placentals, meaning they give birth to fully developed young, as previously mentioned. But the reproductive adaptations besides this is what makes them special. Mingram et al. Did some cool research where they analyzed whale blubber for hormonal concentrations. They found that there's a high amount of male competition for mates, leading to polygamous relationships, and that social ranks are determined by blubber testosterone levels. So, the big macho whales with the most testosterone were at higher ranks than those with lower testosterone levels. The higher-ranked males attract more mates and are therefore given more reproductive opportunities, leading to higher reproductive success in their highly competitive environment. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the show. See you next time!